welcome to the other three amigos, Las Damas, your weekly unofficial SSE Airtricity Women's Premier Division podcast with Declan McCormack, Eileen Ring and John O'Sullivan. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. So sit back, put the feet up, because it's toe tap time.
On this week's Toe Tap Las Damas, it's Paddy's night, but that doesn't stop us. Eileen is nice about Bohs and Shams Rovers. We look at ugly socks. And we opened the pod by talking to Treaty CEO Ciara McCormack about pathways, ambitions, goals, and what her legacy might be. All in this week's Toe Tap Las Damas, Legacy. Hello and welcome to Toe Tap Las Damas Season 3, Episode 186 in total of the Toe Tap catalogue. Once upon a time an award-winning podcast. We're now on Patreon, patreon.com/Toe Tap. If you're new or a seasoned listener, if you could retweet the pod, it is very important to help us grow. And as always, our DMs are always open. With that in mind, we are absolutely delighted to welcome Ciara McCormack, now CEO of Treaty United, to the podcast. Okay, so what we should just let people know is that we're recording at, it's now 9:30 on St. Patrick's night, and we're talking to Ciara, who may well be the only sober Canadian on the whole island of Ireland. So, Ciara, we do appreciate your time. Listen, can we just start with last Saturday? It was a big day for you personally and a big day for the club. 2-0 win, good start to the season. What did you make of it, and how did the day go for you?
I think watching obviously the whole league kick off the weekend before, on one hand it was good to kind of get a chance to sort of see what all the other teams look like, but I think we were like excited to get our team on the field and just to see what we look like. So we've got some great players that have come in, and it was really, really awesome to see them. They looked a bit nervous in the first half, but I think as they sort of settled down, it was really exciting to see them just come together. And obviously wins haven't really come easy for Treaty women. I think it was our first home win since June 2021, which is insane. So it was a really exciting day for sure to start the league with a win.
There was something jumped out to me when I was watching the game, and obviously there was no stream from Galway, so I did end up watching your game. And Jason Shanahan, who I've got to know over the last few years, who was doing your commentary, stated that it was the first time doing commentary that he had seen Treaty United win a game. When you hear things like that and you see how it affects and it makes volunteers happy, is that something that really resonates with you, and something that kind of maybe gives you a little bit of inspiration or drive to improve everything around the club?
Yeah, I'm a super competitive person. So, even coming into this year, the standards are super high and maybe even a bit unrealistic, people might say, for sort of coming from, being where we were last year. But I think it was, I know we have a WhatsApp group, and I know Jason was almost emotional in the group, just how excited it was. And I just saw Hannah, our 16-year-old forward, and she was just saying, just the highlight for her at the end of the game was watching all the fans clapping and so happy. and we just, again, so it's I think it's actually really cute. It's exciting, and everyone was I was still buzzing this morning after it. So it's exciting for sure. Like I said, just because we've obviously it's been a really rough 3 years for the people that have been around on the team for that long. And it's amazing just to have everybody experience, what a win feels like, and hopefully continues.
You've just mentioned the team there, and look, I might as well deal with this straight from the off, because we did get a couple of DMs about it and the rest of it. And one of the things that keeps cropping up is that if you take Saturday's starting lineup, there was only 3 Irish girls or Irish-born girls in Saturday's starting lineup. Is that something that you've deliberately done, that you have done your shopping in Canada and North America, or is it a result of not being able to sign Irish players or get Irish players to play for Treaty United?
Yeah, I mean, we went first to the Irish players that we wanted, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that we offered 10, like double digits worth of Irish girls, like good contracts in terms of probably what was being offered out there. And we literally got turned down by every single player that we offered to. Fianna was the only one that we, managed to snag. But, so at the end of sort of that, like demoralizing few weeks but also at the same time completely understanding, we had lots of conversations with lots of people, and the reality of it is that a lot of great players from Limerick from the 19 to 24-year-old age group left when things were not very good, and and they've found new homes and they're happy at their new homes, and obviously treaty again, obviously they were going off of sort of trust of what Mary and I was saying. But I mean, I also completely understand that, again, treaty has been a bit of a train wreck on the women's side, in the sense of just in every possible capacity in a lot of ways over the last bunch of years, and people rightfully left. So, so I mean, I think like at that point we were sort of left with, and also people coming in hard for our top players as well. So, I mean, the next plan B was obviously I've got a really great link to like Canada and Canadian players, both because our, situation in Canada is quite dire on the women's side for opportunities after university. And obviously I'm like super well connected there from just again being deep in the soccer scene in Canada. So yeah, we were lucky enough to be able to then dip into the Canadian market. And obviously I think I think it was a display yesterday of just how dire it is in Canada that we could just, pull up that level of player kind of, as a afterthought almost. And I mean, now obviously we're very happy. And, again, at the end of the day, if you look at any of the leagues in other countries, the countries like, Chelsea or Lyon or any of these clubs, like they're all pulling from the foreign market. So, I mean, to me, I think it's a positive in the sense that, do people want to come in and beat Treaty 7-0 again with a completely decimated roster, or we've gone out and made our roster competitive and hopefully again, like added a lot of value to all of our younger players in the club that now have this very talented roster that they're just again seeing just all the things that come with players that are a bit older and experienced and, have something to aspire for and, have role models and stuff. So I think it's a positive. And like I said, it's the alternative was coming in and beating Treaty 7-0, and I don't think anybody wants that.
Yeah. Eileen made a comparison a couple of weeks ago on the first edition of this podcast where she compared the treaty setup with a lot of the North American sports setups, and she described you maybe possibly as a GM with Dominic being a head coach. Is that a fair reflection of how things are working currently at Treaty?
I mean, Dom came in November, so obviously, like I said, like we had vultures coming for our players, like the second the season ended, So it was, I mean, it was Mary and I really trying to just keep our roster, like even what we had without like that going. So I think it was almost again, we had such a tiny window to pull in a competitive roster. So yeah, the reality of it is that Mary and I both sort of had to work the phones as, trying to build a roster and obviously trying to hire a coach as well. So those things kind of happened simultaneously. So yeah, I mean, it's fair to say that for sure I was obviously heavily involved in terms of like recruiting the players over. And once obviously Dom came in, then there was, conversations about the players we were bringing in. But it was just the timing thing really in terms of just the way that it all worked out.
And long term, would you see recruitment falling more to Dominic, or is it something that you think yourself and maybe Marie will take care of long term?
I mean, I think honestly at this point, like we're just day to day in terms of just trying to pull this club forward. So I don't think I mean I haven't thought about next year. Honestly, it's we're like week to week at this point. So I mean at the end of the day, I think whether it's Mary or myself or Dom or whoever, like I think we're all competitive people and want to pull together a competitive roster, and whoever helps bring that together, I think, whether I don't think any of us, at the end of the day, yeah, Dom's a coach, and obviously his opinion now that he's in there is super important. But obviously, Mary and I have deep ties in the women's game, so it's a team effort in terms of getting this to where we want it to be.
Speaking about the team, Ciara, the one thing that struck me watching it yesterday, and I'm going to presume it's a deliberate act, but people often talk about the spine of the team, from goalkeeper through the centre back, centre midfield, centre forward. That spine looked very, very strong yesterday. Obviously, we know Anna Uliak from the last couple of years is a very good keeper. Kayla Coyle, at centre back, Frisian in centre midfield, Katie Lawley at centre forward, and it just looked a very, very strong spine down the centre of the park. Was a stupid question, I suppose, but was that a deliberate act? Were you deliberately looking to put that strong spine in place, and then fill in the needs around it?
I mean, to be honest, the recruiting happened very organically. Like Annie played with Kayla in university, so that was the connection there. I heard of like again, the Canadian soccer community is small. I'm on the pro player union was for Canada. So one of the guys on that, met Talia somewhere and recommended Talia. So I mean, it kind of did just work out in terms of yeah, like it wasn't like I was, we were going after a center back or whatever. But obviously, yeah, of course, when you're trying to build a team, you're looking to build a good spine. But it kind of, again, happened more organically in terms of where the players came from. And then, and then the nice part was once we got a couple of players, then it's a small enough community that like this player recommends this player and you talk to this coach and that player's good. And, so it was kind of, so yeah, I think, but like I said, we were on such a tiny window anyways, and it was like a little bit chaotic as opposed to some deliberate, like gathering a nice spine together. But it has worked out quite well that that we do have a good spine in terms of what ended up over in Limerick. So
if we're sitting here this time next year, and I would imagine if you have a good season this year, Irish players would be far more willing, shall we say, to sign with you guys next year. Are you somebody who just says, okay, they turned me down last year, but that was just the business side of football and this business side of the league? Are you somebody who thinks, do you know what? No, you turned me down last year. I'm not going back to you this year because, you weren't willing to do business with us last year?
I mean, that sounds a bit spiteful, and I don't think that that's sort of our vibe.
Yeah, sir.
But no, I mean, put it this way, like I think the door was wide open this year for anybody that wanted to walk through it. And I think, again, even the Canadian girls are already talking about staying next year, just they're having a great experience so far. So I think, and obviously Mary has 6 players on the under 16 national team on her under 17 team. So so I mean, again, I don't think it would necessarily, again, if we have the majority of our roster stick around and we've got all these young up and coming players, I just don't think we're not going to have as open of a door probably next year, but who knows, right? Like it's again, at this point, like I said, we're week to week, but no, I mean, definitely it wouldn't be like a spiteful, you guys turned us down this year. So, but I think it's just more of, again, our younger players are getting older and players that have now on the roster have had a good experience, and we won't have like 15 spots to fill next year kind of thing. So at least I hope not. Please God.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, no. So yeah, it wouldn't be a spiteful thing whatsoever. It would be more of, hopefully we're building a program that we're not having that type of, player overturn next year. So.
Can I just ask the backup, when you came into Treaty and you played, was this always like, even when you came in as a player, was this the end goal? Did you know coming in as a player, I'm coming in here to take over, or was it something that just kind of happened, right?
Yeah, no, I joke that on Facebook, it has like 1 year ago you were doing X, Y, and Z. And I was laughing when the takeover happened because the year before it popped up, like I was in Thailand. Like playing soccer wasn't even on my radar because Treaty got a hold of me. I had come in like March 2022 with the offer to bring in players, and they kind of had the board hemmed and hawed and whatever. And then I kind of just went away, just because it was like, I wasn't going to chase them to bring in good players. And so they obviously got smashed all of 2022. And then the end of the year, they reached out saying, hey, would you bring over those Canadian players? And so at that point, again, I was like, well, there's 6 weeks basically that I have to do this. And so I was like joking that I was like Jerry Maguire on the phone, like, calling everybody that I knew once I just decided to, give it a run to, bring over the players. But I'd sort of said June is kind of, I'll reevaluate just because I don't even know what I'm coming into. And then obviously I'm like very heavily involved in like the, athlete welfare space at home. So I was cognizant of like, I didn't know what I was bringing these players into. So I kind of felt like, well, I want to be there to just know that it's a good environment. And so that's when I had said, okay, well, I'll just jump in. And again, I don't know again how my body's going to be after I hadn't played, 11v11 in the competitive environment for like 4 years. So so yeah, it was kind of a last minute decision for me to jump in or whatever. And then, then it was kind of a case of once I got to treaty at the beginning of the year, I could kind of see that the league was, pushing towards professionalism. Treaty was very, just didn't have resources. And so that was when I sort of said to them, listen, if I was to find investors that would be interested in it, would you guys be open to it? And they said they would be. And so that was sort of that started that odyssey. But no, this is not some like well orchestrated plan. I still to this day, I'm just like kind of blown away at how it's all worked out. But yeah, no, obviously I'm very grateful for the opportunity now, and it's exciting to see how everything has started. But yeah, there's not some grand master plan that included me playing because that wasn't even on my radar either a year and a half ago.
Okay, and just you've referenced investment there and investors. I mean, the one thing about investors, Ciara, is obviously they look for a return. And like all of us have been around the League of Ireland for 30 plus years. And to be fair, I don't think any investor has ever got a return. So like what's the ROI for your investors, or is there a touch of philanthropism about the whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of the investors is that they were not on the hunt for a League of Ireland team, and I think they even said it like if they were looking to get a huge return, they'd buy a meat packing plant or like whatever businesses that they're involved in. So I mean, it was again a very organic situation that I spoke to them about. Again, I have the connection through a friend of mine. It's his family's like family office. So I had gone to them and sort of just told them, again, my enthusiasm for the League of Ireland and where it's at, and Limerick as a city, and just where the club was at in terms of the foundation that was there. I was the one that kind of like, with all my enthusiasm and my belief in it, I guess I kind of like lured them in. No, but I mean, I think for them, like they're very family, like it's a family run office. So it's not like you're, the typical venture capitalists that are, cutthroat, all about making money. Like it's a family office. So it's their own capital that they're investing. So obviously, again, they're not looking to, bleed money whatsoever. But it's also not, again, their intentions are, and if you look at their history of their portfolio, like they invest long term. And I think that's what makes me most excited as a soccer player per se, let's say, like being in the soccer space. I think a lot of times, you have either business people that don't know soccer or soccer people that don't know business. And I think what we've already really benefited from is having, people that are giving, we're the soccer people, but they're giving us like a wonderful structure from a business perspective that I think on a long-term level will allow this to flourish. And so, so I mean, like I said, I think if it was like about, just making money, obviously that's not the mindset. Like we're all coming in with a very long-term mindset to, really build this into something special. So they share that for sure.
Okay, so look, that's interesting. You've spoken, Ciara, about, you were in Thailand a couple of years ago. Obviously, you've played in Canada, you've played in the States, you've played in, I think, Finland and a number of different leagues around. Is there anything you've seen in other leagues and other areas that you think you could bring to the League of Ireland? Not just the treaty, but maybe sit down with the FAI and say, look, these are things we could look at, or maybe you should look at. I know myself and John last year had a conversation where we were both very keen on the idea of centralized kit deals and things like that. So just in terms of, you would have experienced maybe not directly, but in North America, obviously, salary cap is a big thing in professional sports. There, centralized kit deals are another one. Centralized contracts in certain sports in certain areas. Is there any of those kind of areas that you think might be beneficial to the League of Ireland now and moving forward?
I mean, I think just I think what's been interesting for me kind of coming in totally from the outside, and obviously, like you said, I've played in a lot of different countries, so I obviously have seen a lot of different things. I think the one thing that has struck me and is kind of an immediate thing that we've tried to improve in treaty is just the amount of times a week players are playing, because I came in last year and we were training twice a week, and the last time I trained twice a week, I was 11 years old and toe punting the ball, like, so I think that was the first thing for me coming in. Again, if you want, like that's a easy improve, like, improving in terms of, something that's tangible and immediate kind of thing. And just to give you context, like when I played in Norway, I actually played with Ada Hegerberg, who is like the Lyon forward, but she's 15 years old and was training 5 nights a week with our team, with all these players, again, from around the world that were, 30 years old and seasoned veterans. And she also was going to school Monday, Wednesday, Friday at a sports school. So that's, to me, like that's the level that, players in other countries are training at. And so again, coming into Ireland and seeing that would, like, and even me saying, okay, guys, let's try to go 4 times a week. Everyone looked at me like I had two heads, like, but that's, again, so I think that's the kind of thing on just a really base level that I feel like could raise standards immediately, would be, training more. Right. So I think that's across the board in every country I've been in, like Canada, US, Denmark, Norway, like everyone's training just more, so that to me is like the first easy quantifiable, change, I guess you could say, but that obviously costs money. And I do think the thing when I'm just like, and again, I'm only totally as an outsider listening to things, like when you hear the amount of money getting put into things like greyhound racing, or just things, again, where you're like, how is that, and with all due respect to all the greyhound racers out there, again, I'm just an ignorant Canadian, but again, how is that building, like that's what I love about soccer, right? It's just, and sport in general, right? It's like the amount of, just from a life enhancement perspective for young kids to be, being exposed to the game and all the healthy things that come with like sport and all that kind of thing. So that, to me, like when you're looking at it's like wild dollars when you look at it in terms of what's going into some of these other activities that, like that isn't coming into soccer. So I think that's something, and then obviously like the facilities thing is something that's talked about, and that ties in with being able to train more, as having those facilities. So I think it's more bigger picture things, to be honest, that I think, that like, I think those things are more important than centralized kit deals. Like, of course, those sorts of things are important as well, but I think there's a bigger picture structure that I think, I think that's kind of where you need to start if you want to start raising the level and putting, moving things forward. And that's, again, like that's just my ignorant Canadian perspective, being here for a few months and just kind of, again, sort of picking up information and what I can see.
You've made reference there a couple of times to ignorant Canadian, and I mean that's not the case at all. You have a worldwide depth of knowledge that people in this league don't have. You're the CEO of Treaty, and I think you're somebody that maybe the rest of the league can look to learn from in terms of experiences and real football experiences and things like that. So I certainly, in terms of what you've achieved and what you've done in the league, I certainly wouldn't be belittling yourself in any way. You raise an interesting point. Then you talk about greyhound racing, and it all comes back to government funding then, and funding of the FAI and the FAI funding clubs, and it's a very, very technical conversation, I suppose, in a way. But just for your own, what you've seen so far, do you feel like there are things that the FAI can do better that would encourage that government funding to come into place?
I mean, I think you have to look at the fact of, obviously, and I mean, I was on the national team in the John Delaney era, and changing in the bathrooms with, like, all those sorts of things. But I mean, I think when you look at coming out of an era like that, and how much, and I mean, Canada's going through it right now. Like, we are in our John Delaney era in Canada, and like, it stunts the growth so much of when you have that level of incompetence and whatever you want to call it at the top. And so I think, I think looking at the FAI, like in terms of the clean out that's happened with, with that sort of cycle being over, and a new group coming in, like I have to say very genuinely how impressed I've been with, just again, League of Ireland, I guess, is who I'm dealing with as opposed to necessarily the FAI. Like, I think I'm very excited to be here in terms of just the people. Like, I'm so impressed with the people that are running the league. And and I can honestly say, as someone that's been in a lot of eras of like a lot of lip service given to like equality and women and whatever, like that was something that really struck me last year, is that it actually felt genuine in the sense that it was marketed. And I have really good feelings, maybe juxtaposed with what I'm coming out of from Canada, like maybe is part of why I'm flying so high with how great I think things are here. But like, the one thing I will say is that I sat in an AGM for the FAI where, Jonathan Hill was getting grilled over 12,000 euro. And to me, like, and I think I tweeted it afterwards, like, your like association is in a great state when there is an hour given to 12 grand. When you look at these in a footballing context where like millions and millions and millions, like, in Canada right now is sort of being siphoned to God knows where through, just again, that level of like that level of money that no one really knows where it's going or who it's going to, kind of thing. And so I really, I mean, I think, again, obviously it's tough when you're coming off of that kind of an era, but like, I'm very positive in terms of, I genuinely feel like there's like a great foundation there now. I think there's a lot of catch up to do, and obviously from a standpoint of reputationally and all that kind of stuff. But my experience, honestly, I genuinely can say has only been positive, and I feel very optimistic, because I think that's a first step of success with anything, is like just having good people involved and having good governance. And as much as there has been, I've obviously listened to the news and stuff, like I feel very positive in terms of the direction and the people that are involved. Yeah, I think, and again, I know this even from being at Treaty, like you can't change a million things at once overnight, but I think they're doing a good job of like getting basic foundational stuff right. And I think that's the place where then you can start to get into the more, the granular different sorts of things that need to be changed.
Just expand on that then ever so slightly, Ciara, because I know, and they will never publicly say it or publicly admit it, but I know there are clubs in this league whose fundamental belief is that the onus is on the government and on the FAI to fund women's football. And as a club, they don't bear much responsibility for that funding. I'm going to presume that that's not a thought process that you might share.
No, I mean, I mean, obviously, I think every group is different. And I think, I can only speak for Treaty. And we're obviously in a situation that we have the luxury of a really great backer, of the club. But yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I do think that, again, when you're running a club and you're sort of seeing, at least for me now, obviously I have the budget and I'm right in the midst of all the financial side of things. And you do see how much fields cost and buses cost. And, just again, as the standards are raising, all those things cost money, And so, yeah, of course, I guess on one hand, it would be great to, and we do get grants and there's things that come in and those are all very, very helpful things. But yeah, I mean, we're also, again, trying to do different things to kind of build a good, solid financial base. And like I said, like, we're very lucky to have, not even just the funding, but just to have business minds around us from Tricor in terms of helping us like lay a really solid foundation that the club can build off of. And I think for me, I think, yeah. So I think, like, again, we're in a situation that I wouldn't want to compare ourselves to other clubs because I know everyone's in different situations. But no, I don't think. I think we're trying to, again, build and kind of find our own financial resources. But obviously, like I said, we're coming in having financial resources that are helping us build those resources and also a structure around us. So I think that those things obviously are resources that not everybody has. So yeah. So I mean, but I think at the end of the day, like for all the clubs, the more that the FA, like the more the League of Ireland like looks like positive things are happening. Again, I'm sure that that's a cyclical thing then when that's what draws in funding. And again, it like grows like a snowball, hopefully. So I think for us, we're just trying to build a good buzz in Limerick and build a good product and make something that the community is proud of. And really that's like all we can do.
I suppose, look, obviously we've spoke about the influx of foreign players into Limerick. First of all, how are they all settling in the wonderful city that is Limerick? And I suppose, look, you have someone like Mary, obviously they're involved. And I would think for someone like her, who probably never really got to play much for football in Limerick and a very, very proud Limerick woman like that, she wants that pathway through whereby like Treaty or Limerick, whatever you will be called, will be, I suppose, stacked out essentially with Limerick players, because it's traditionally like it's been a hotbed of talent, like, and maybe talent that I suppose for a number of different reasons has went under the radar, or girls have kind of fallen away. But I presume that's kind of a long-term plan, and having someone like Mary in there she'd be driving that on, would she?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like I said, like you look at the exodus of Limerick players that are performing, really well in the League of Ireland, that are, driving out of the city however many nights a week for training and stuff. So yeah, I mean, absolutely. That's 100% the goal. But I think part of the problem before was that girls were making that jump into the League of Ireland when they weren't ready, just out of necessity for bodies, and then they're getting beat 7-0 and having a horrendous experience and then going elsewhere, So I think it's for sure. Like, I think Mary, like I said, Mary has 6 under 16 national team players on her squad. So of course those are players you want to, be like have them growing and as players and getting older and getting sort of seasoned in at the right times and stuff. So yeah, and obviously, again, Mary, no one's more like Limerick through and through than Mary for sure. So I think, so I think honestly, it's kind of a best of both worlds situation at this point, that hopefully, again, these young players can come up and train with the seniors and see what this level looks like, and but not be thrown in before they're ready. And I think, at the end of the day, of course, we want the Limerick girls that are the real big talents to want to stay in Limerick and have a club to aspire to be a part of, and that, that it feels like a huge accomplishment to jump up to the senior team and all those sorts of things, that I think from a player development standpoint, like that's how clubs thrive.
I just want to ask you one other thing there, Ciara, because obviously you're settled in Limerick now. You're settled in Limerick around a year. And how is your Limerick slang coming along? I saw somebody had mentioned they were trying to attract local people to your crowds and said, I don't know, do you want to hear Canadians call people gowls, then come down to Markets Field? How's your Limerick slang coming along?
It's lacking. I try not to open my mouth very much, because I just usually end up making an idiot out of myself. Like, I think I called TG car. Well, I know I called TG car TG4, just things like that. I'm staying very humble to yeah.
You're not fluent in Limerick, so yet it's only a matter of time, I'm sure.
I'm getting used to. I'm getting the hang of the accent though, so I think that's a positive. My mom's a thick West Cork accent, so I feel like it teed me up to get my ears really like listening to the different accents for sure. So,
Ciara, I guess what's the hopes for this season? Say in both codes, on the women and men's side. What would you consider a successful season in both?
Obviously the teams continuing to win would be amazing. But I think at the end of the day, just to have really competitive games, and that's what we've had so far. Just being in every game that would be great. And obviously I think, if we can kind of, I think really like, and having players that are thriving and happy, and I think results come from that. So I think for us, like I would love, just again, the crowds has just been buzzing with, just the games have been exciting, and like including myself. So I think that's for us. We just want that to continue.
And then if we just move that to long term, I mean, what's the long term goal for the club?
I mean, I would love a fully professional men's and women's team, to be honest. So I think, however long that takes, but obviously we need to continue building up the, just the success around on, crowds and all the other things, that build a healthy club financially, but I think absolutely that that is 100% what we'd be working towards for sure.
Historically, there's been a bit of a gap between local football, schoolboy football, schoolgirl football in Limerick and the senior club in the city. And I guess going back through history, people like Jackie McCarthy, Yvonne Tracy, right up to the modern era, there's always been really good female players coming through in Limerick. And there's a centre of excellence up there. I'm not sure if Barbara Birmingham is still involved in it, but that COE has consistently produced really, really good players. Do you think the fact that you've got better role models potentially within the club now, in terms of those experienced players coming in from abroad, does it make it easier, would say, both on and off the field to kind of attract the kids that are coming through that COV or local teams, to stop them, we'll say, heading elsewhere? Because one example I pick is Nicole Nix is from North Tipperary. She was with Treaty underage. She's playing down in Wexford Youths now. And really, and Cork City are in a similar situation. How important is the local team, senior team, doing well to recruiting local players?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very, very important, and I think that's, I think for us, we just want to create a club that any, male or female player that leaves Limerick, it's just, you're crazy for leaving Limerick because there's something so good in town. Do you know what I mean? And I think at the end of the day, really, players are just looking for a competitive, good environment that they can thrive in. And so I think for us, that's just what we're focused on providing. And I think, again, when that's existent in the city, just that's again, that's when that you're doing a good job, is when those players aren't leaving, and driving the 2 hours to Dublin or 2.5 to Wexford, or whatever crazy drives people are doing right now out of Limerick, when again, there's a team in the city. So I think, yeah, absolutely, that's our goal. And I think, again, talking about success, would I love to say at the end of the season that both the men's and the women's we're winning and all that sort of stuff, that would be amazing. But I think, again, on a long-term basis, I think, again, when you have a club that's stable, successful, there's a good buzz around it, it's positive, again, for us, the challenge to just raise the bar so that, I think that's going to be sort of our measuring stick. Are those players, are we going to have the Limerick players wanting to be a part of the club? And hopefully, again, in the long term, that all those players that you mentioned are players that want to stay in Treaty, and they don't even think twice about going elsewhere because there's something so positive in town.
The only other thing I was going to ask is how good is Maddie McGuan? Is it from Pike Rovers? Everyone's heard the name. How good can she be?
I actually just went to the parade in Limerick with her family today. No, that she's an awesome kid. What's so good about her is that she's, she's just very humble and has, again, when I think back of playing with an Ada Hegerberg when she was 14 or 15, she had that insane competitive. She didn't care that everybody was 10 years older than her. She was yelling at them to, get the ball or whatever. So, I think, obviously, again, I think that you don't want to hype up any player, too much when they're young and put that kind of pressure on them. But she's a super level-headed kid, and just, again, she's very talented for sure. And surrounded by a lot of other really talented players on the 17s. And yeah, absolutely. I think, but like I said, I think the thing that, again, just from being around Madison a little bit, she's just got a very, very level head. And I think that's very important, again, as you're sort of climbing these levels and again, great work ethic and all those things. And yeah, absolutely. She's a very talented player too. I jump in and train with Mary's 17 sometimes. So I've gotten to play with her. Yeah. So absolutely. For being 14, so many of those girls on that team, my mind's blown at how good they are at 14, 15. So yeah, I think it's exciting in terms of just the talent that we have in the club. And again, like I said, the challenge will be that we have a senior team that all those kids, even when other clubs come for them, they're they'd never leave Treaty because they're having such a good experience. So
the only thing is now, Ciara, you said you were not going to put pressure on her, but you have also compared her to a Ballon d'Or winner. So no, make sure.
I don't think she'll be listening to the podcast, hopefully.
We'll play this back to you in a few years when she's picking up the award.
Yeah, no, she's, I mean, I just love to see a girl playing with the boys. Like she went over to Sunderland with the under 14s and again, just the stories just from the coaching staff about how, they were like the boys that she was playing against were kind of like thought it was really funny playing against a girl, and then they got, burned a couple of times by her, and all of a sudden they, took the whole thing a little more seriously. So I think that's great. Like I think that's great for boys to see girls that can jump in and girls to, and that's actually, again, talking about the FAI, like that is a rule that I believe they've changed this year, that I think the girls can play with the boys right up to under 17. And I think that that's very progressive in the sense that I think from a player development perspective, having girls play with boys is, I always, from when I played, you could always tell girls that had played with boys growing up. And I think that's a huge, if, talking about the Irish system, I think that's a huge advantage, that the system seems to be so open to allowing the girls that can hang with the boys to play with them. So.
Okay, Ciara, if I can just take it back, something you just said a while ago there just struck me, jumped out of me at the time, and I just want to go back to it. You said however long it takes. So is it fair to say that you haven't been given a timeline, say, by investors or people involved in that we have to achieve this, say, in 18 months, 24 months, 36 months? It's just however long it takes.
No, I haven't had any, like, again, that's the beauty of a family office versus a venture capital firm, like it's their money. They can, again, obviously no one's gonna, if it was like a crazy bleed, no one's, like, but I don't, it isn't a crazy bleed. And I think, again, no, there's no timelines. And again, we're all in it for the long term, both them and myself. And so, I think that is a luxury in terms of being able to make really smart decisions on a long, like with a long-term mindset, as opposed to feeling someone breathing down your back that you need to, come up with a certain number by a certain time. Like I don't feel that pressure at all. It's again, we're just looking to just continue to lay really strong foundations.
In terms of investors and everything else, Ciara, and you've mentioned it a few times, can I just ask you, do you have skin in the game yourself financially?
I do have an ownership stake in it.
Finally, my last question is, in your quiet moments and moments of reflection and things like that, do you ever think about what your own legacy is or what your own legacy will be to the world of football in general?
I honestly feel like my life is so chaotic day to day right now that I don't have quiet moments to think about anything. No, I mean, I think, I mean, no, I had to be dead honest. I haven't really sat and, thought about any kind of a master plan. I think for me, like, I just really love the game. And when I've seen it at its, at its best, it's such a positive, life-changing thing in so many different capacities. So I think, I think for me, like that's what this opportunity is to just, to just really give like a really amazing thing to the community, and to just really, again, just kind of challenge myself to set a high bar, and just again, to have the kids that come through our club have a really great experience. And I think, I think that's for me, that's really anything I'm involved in. That's kind of what I want to try to, a legacy of just leaving it better than what you came into. And so I think, I don't think I'm thinking really past that much more than, in whatever space that I'm like lucky enough to be in. And it's, I wouldn't have imagined in a million years that I would, be living in Limerick and all that sort of, that's come with all this. But I think, again, that's all I've ever really tried to do, whether as a player or any capacity, is just leave things better than when you came. And that philosophy's landed me here. And I think it's just the same mindset that I'm taking this all in with.
Cool, because I have to say the reason I asked you the question was I was thinking during the week, you were coming on and what way was I going to come at things. But from a legacy point of view, I have a 5-year-old daughter. John has daughters who play. Eileen has a young daughter as well. And I guess to me, your legacy will always be, no matter what happens going forward, your legacy will always be that if my daughter decides she wants to play any kind of competitive sport, that sport is probably safer now than it was 5, 10, 15 years ago. And that's Ciara McCormack's legacy, not just to football, but to sport in general. And that's a very strong legacy for anybody to take with them at any stage, you know.
You're gonna make me cry on a St. Patrick's
I'm
Day
crying
night.
as well, Decky. There's no need for that. Like, Jesus Christ.
That's very meaningful. Oh, thank you. That sincerely means a lot. So thanks for. I'm glad if that's what my name makes you think of. That makes me very happy. So thank you.
No problem whatsoever. I guess that's as good a place or any to end this. Listen, Ciara, we want to thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. And like I had the same with Phil Trill last week. I just cannot, in my heart of hearts, wish you good luck next week. You know, we travel to Marcus Field on Friday night for a big First Division men's game. I will wish you all the best of luck in the women's side of things, but I just can't bring myself to do it. I maybe John or Eileen are more inclined to do so than I am, but I can't. But look, for the season as a whole, yes, all the will in the world and all the best luck in the world. Just next Friday night, I just hope you get thumped all over Markets Field. I'm sorry, I can't say anything else, you know.
I'd be concerned if you did say anything else, so that's okay. From what I've heard about Cork people, you guys are, or actually what I know even from my mom's family, you guys are pretty proud. So I can take it with a grain of salt. Might even invite you in for a cup of tea into where we let no.
I would love to take you up on that, but I guess it's going to depend on who else is in there having cups of tea. Listen, Ciara, thanks a million for your time. So much appreciated. And as I said,
No problem.
best of luck for the season ahead.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Ciara.
Thanks, Ciara.
Guys, that was a fantastic chat with Ciara McCormack. Hope everybody enjoyed it as much as we did in participating in it. We're going to drive on with the rest of the pod. This weekend in the under-17s, Bohs Group A, Bohs and Finn Harps drew 0-0. Drogheda beat Dundalk 2-0 in the Loud Derby, and Shells versus Longford had no result on FAI Connect, so I don't know, does that mean that it was called off or the result just wasn't put into FAI Connect. Group B saw Athlone beat Peamount 4-3. Mayo lost away at Treaty United 3-0. DLR beat Sligo by the same scoreline, and St. Pat's won 2-0 away at Galway. In Group C, Cork City and Wexford was called off after Cork City and Wexford was called off just 10 minutes before kickoff. Kerry narrowly lost 3-2 at home to Bray, and Waterford beat CK United 2-1 down in the Daisha. In the women's under-19 games, Dundalk beat Peamount 2-0, and Bohs beat Finn Harps 4-1. Both of those games were in Group A. Sligo Rovers beat Bray Wanderers 4-0, and Galway won 4-0 away at DLR in Group B. And in Group C, Cove were beaten 5-0 at home by CK United. Wexford beat Waterford 2-1 in Wexford. And finally, Cork City beat Treaty United 2-1 in Limerick. So, Ciara McCormack. Guys, very quickly, was there anything jumped out at those results for me? John, I guess very quickly, Wexford travelling all the way to Bishopstown to play Cork City. The game was called off 10-15 minutes before the game started. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I suppose it looked like obviously the game was going to be streamed live on YouTube, and the club left the stream on. You could see there was a lot of water sitting on the pitch. So ultimately it looked like it probably was the right decision. And I guess, to be fair to the referee, if you've got Wexford that are after travelling this distance, you want to give the game every chance to go ahead, and leave the decision as late as you can. look, player safety comes first. So there was a lot of water sitting on the pitch. So the call did come very, very late. Like both teams were pretty much finished their warm up. But look, I wouldn't take too much issue with it, to be honest. One thing that did jump out at me though, the results of the weekend was Leah McGrath got both goals for Wexford's under-19s against Waterford. She's still only 15. Just keep an eye on that name. She's from South Tip. She is going to be an absolute superstar. As I'm in the habit of putting 15 and 14-year-old kids in Ballon d'Or positions today already. So,
Next,
but no,
Alexis
she's a phenomenal
Putellas or
footballer.
something like that, maybe.
Yeah.
No pressure, Leah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put any more pressure on the young girls, so we'll move
Careful
swiftly
now.
along.
First €2 million transfer out of the league of Ireland.
Yeah, well, like, I mean, that's okay. We can't do it tonight, but that is something I want to get into somewhere in the near future, is the whole structures within the women's game in terms of transfer fees, development payments, all that stuff. But as I said, John, we can't do it tonight, but I know it's something you probably would look to get your teeth into. It's something in the very near future. Guys, we had an interesting weekend, if that's the correct word, in week 2 of the SSE Airtricity Women's Premier Division. Might as well start in Markets Field. I know we briefly had a chat about it with Ciara, so we won't spend too long on it, but a strong start for Treaty in their first home game under the new ownership. 2-0 win against DLR. I watched this game. I have to say, Ciara said that she felt they were maybe a little nervous in the first half, and that's a very fair comment, but I never felt like it was a game they were in any danger of losing. Second half, they came out of the traps, whatever was said at halftime. John, they did, as I said, they came out of the traps very quickly second half, and they put the game to bed very, very quickly, and I would argue almost very easily in the early parts of that second half.
Yeah, they really did come out really strong in the second half. DLR, to be fair, Michelle Doonan was plowing alone for on a run up front, and they needed to get someone up to support her. But I think the reality was Treaty had them pegged back. I think it was the 86th minute before DLR troubled the Treaty keeper. It was, it really was a comfortable win, which bodes well for them for the future.
Yeah, I think John we don't want to put all the focus on Treaty. So John just mentioned Michelle Doonan up front for DLR. I have to say, she's somebody who I kind of half expected maybe a side like Bohs or somebody like that they may have taken a chance on her in the off season. They didn't. But apart from Michelle Doonan, there isn't much positivity to take from DLR's performance, to be honest.
No, look, they'll have those weeks, but I think they're going to look at, I suppose, the week before, and Laura Heffernan's going to look at the Shamrock Rovers result and the performance in that game and what they did in that, and look at that. You look to build from that, and you're going to have days where you're just outclassed, and you're going into maybe that Treaty side whose tails are going to be up. Look, it's their first game of the season. It's a home game. It's a totally new thing for so many of them. So it was always going to be a tough game for DLR. But look, we did point them out at the season that it might be a bit of a struggle for them in terms of like certain players being there or not being there. Like, we never know. There's a huge amount of, as Ciara said a while ago, like players being courted left, right and centre in this league in the off season. Just because she stayed at DLR wouldn't necessarily mean that she hadn't options elsewhere, So yeah, look, we've said it's going to be a tough year for DLR, but at the same time, they showed in the Shamrock Rovers game what they're capable of as well when they all show up and they're all firing. And I do think having a really solid keeper in Eve makes a big difference, and I think Jess makes a big difference back there as well. And that bit of experience and know-how in games, maybe against teams that are a little bit around them, could be a big difference from them. Like, realistically, and you look, Treaty are still are an unknown element, but you would be expecting them to be a little bit higher up the table than they have previously been.
Yeah, John, very quickly, just finally on this game, I already spoke to Ciara about the strong spine, but like, Treaty had a number of players who stood out to me in that game. I have to say, I thought Grace McInerney at right back looked very, very impressive. Young Irish girl. Katie Lawley up top was, for me, extremely impressive and somebody who could do very well in the league this year. She took her goal brilliantly. Speaking of taking their goals brilliantly, the second goal from a corner, Van Dulder, I mean, it's an unbelievable header. It takes the paint off the underside of the crossbar, off the inside of the post. I mean, you could not put it any more in that corner, John, than she did. But on the other side, for me, if that's the defensive setup that DLR are going to have from corners, they're going to be in massive trouble from set plays this year, because she was given the freedom of the park. The setup was wrong initially, because I know DLR had made subs earlier and it was one of the subs that were picking her up, but it was a physical mismatch. It was a mismatch massively height wise as well, and Treaty were happy and well able to take advantage of that. But I thought the setup defensively from DLR at that corner was very, very poor, and Treaty exploited it, as we've said, John.
Yeah, and look, as good as the header was, she was able to watch the flight of the ball right onto her head and watch the ball into the top corner without anyone from Treaty getting close anyone from DLR getting close to her. A brilliant header, but under no pressure whatsoever. Not to take away from the finish, it was excellent, but really just way too much space.
Yeah. Eileen, at the same time Treaty were getting that 2-0 win over DLR, your faves, Shells, were getting the same result, a 2-0 win away at Piedmont. I know we said last week that maybe it just being week 2, it may not be as significant, but I don't think you can get away from the fact that Shelburne went to Piedmont, I would argue won quite comfortably. Is that fair or unfair, Eileen?
No, I think that's fair. It was a very, very comfortable game for Shelburne, bar a couple of very brief spells from Piedmont. I thought Shelburne were very, very good value for it. Look, it is early in the season, and I think Shelburne, look, at the end of the day, 3 points are just 3 points. But like momentum-wise, it's a big thing. But I would think at the same time, Shelburne, and even listening to Owen Weir in his interviews afterwards, they're not going to get ahead of themselves with it. They had a big result there last year as well. And the Industrial Park Derby, I'm being informed it's called by a couple of people in Dublin now. But like Shelburne, I was really, really impressed with them. Look, I was impressed with them the week before, apart from I thought they were a little bit rudderless in the final third, but I thought they were excellent going forward. Noelle was kind of the focal point up top, and maybe while she doesn't have like out and out pace that you'd see a lot of strikers have, she has the footballing intelligence to just read where the ball was going to go a lot of the time, to know who's going to put it where, and to drop back in when she needed to and make stuff happen. And like the first goal, the ball, I know you are going to controversially think it's a handball. I don't think it's a handball, but it's a brilliant through ball from Hannah Healy, and Kiva Keenan's playing a little bit further forward since with Jess Gargan being back, and like Kiva Keenan's probably one of the best athletes we have in the league. Like she's incredibly athletic, and she doesn't score many goals, but look, she is primarily a defender. But with that athleticism she has, and I suppose their lack of this out and out goal scorer, she's certainly an option if she can find the target like that, because it was a great goal. And then maybe I think they're probably a bit disappointed that they didn't capitalise on it a bit more, because especially with a side like Piedmont, like even I thought they probably got away with down in Turner's Cross the week before was like missing Sive Doyle maybe doesn't stand out that much in Turner's Cross in a game where you're really comfortable, but it was so obvious, like she's such a miss for them. I don't know how long she's out for, like, but she, like, of course she was a player of the season last year, and arguably the season before she wasn't far off it either. Like she's so consistent and she makes so many things happen for them. And we had spoke again about them lacking a striker, and I thought that was very, very evident again this week. Now, when Ellen Dolan went in up top, I thought they were a little bit better. When Amanda McQuillan was called on, I thought she was brilliant. I know she was in the team of the week in goal. That's probably just because she had a clean sheet, but she was very, very good, to be fair. So yeah, look, I don't think they're going to get too ahead of themselves, but they were impressive. Like you'd be kind of worried about where they can go, because like Roma McLaughlin was incredible, and I think the manager said after, it's her first time she's played 60 minutes in over a year, like, and just on the ball. I forgot how good she was, because it's a while since she's been in the league. And And it's a little bit frightening to think about how much better she can get. And then they've Ava O'Mahony to come in the summer as well. Could they potentially add a striker in the summer? Look, yeah, it could be a little bit frightening for the rest of the league, but we'll see.
I was actually not going to mention the whole handball thing, but as you like to do occasionally, I think, you're trying to set the whole of Shelbourne Football Club after me again. But like, it's not a deliberate handball. It's not a deliberate action by Hannah Healy. But for me, in that goal, she was trying to hook the ball the opposite direction back over her own shoulder, and it strikes her own hand, and it's a fundamental change in the direction of the play and everything else. But I have to say that I think there was only one of the Piedmont players who were looking for the handball as well. So I am quite willing to accept that maybe myself and one Piedmont player are the only two people on the planet who saw that as a handball. But yeah, I see it as a handball. John, I don't know if you've seen it or if you have any opinion on it.
I get what you're saying, but it would have been incredibly harsh to give that, in my opinion. I know what you're saying, but no, I would come down on the side if it wasn't the handball. I do get where you're coming from, but it would be so. Like if that was given against a team I supported, I would be losing the plot. Put it that way.
And look, maybe it is an anti-Shelbourne bias that I have, but no,
well, we know.
I put it to you this way.
Yeah, you're just pretending now. I hate Shelbourne. Look at me.
No, I'll put it to you this way, right? If that goal is scored against Cork City, then I'm roaring and shouting from the rooftops about a handball,
but
I just can't get away from that.
What if Cork City score the goal and it's disallowed?
I think I am in that position. I think I am.
Stop! You'd lose your shit.
You're coming over the railings at the linesman or the ref.
You're gone. You're jumping down the Donny Ford. Like, come on.
I don't think so.
Don't accept it.
I think I'm big enough to say, look, I can understand why that was given as a handball if that was the case. But look,
game is gone if that's a handball, deck.
Okay, we'll have to agree to disagree. John, in Tala, Shamrock Rovers 1, Wexford 1. I mean, probably on the space of it, another poor result for Wexford, is it?
No, I thought they were quite good, actually. Like, Rovers did have a lot of the ball, and there were a few times when they kind of threatened to do something with it, but Stephanie Zamper had a header about 40 minutes in from an Anya Gorman corner, and that was the first time they really threatened at all. They looked for Leo Leary quite a lot in the first half, but Maeve Russell and Ella Malloy in front of her had her locked up. And I thought Wexford looked quite comfortable. It's half time, Rovers moved things around a little bit. They pulled Leo Leary deeper, pulled Joy Ralph out wide to where Maeve Russell was, and put Jamie Thompson out wide left. But what they did then was they put Anya O'Gorman into the centre. And then around the same time, Wexford lost Michaela Lawrence to injury, and they took Kylie Murphy out. And in the space of about 5 minutes there, Wexford's midfield changed almost entirely. And Anya O'Gorman started to pick up an awful lot of the ball, and she forced Jane Myrne into a couple of very good saves. Overall, I thought Wexford weren't troubled too much, bar the last 10 minutes of the game. It did get very stretched towards the end, and look, Ella Malloy had a shot from distance. Mia Lenihan had one as well, but Rovers finished much stronger. The two goals were almost carbon copies of each other. Two set pieces flung in over the keeper. Probably both sides should have been giving their keepers a bit more protection with the ball in the air, but ultimately neither manager would be happy with the goals they conceded because they were like set pieces just bombed in high. Rovers would probably be a bit more disappointed with the result because they did finish very strongly, but they didn't really carve Wexford open at any stage. They didn't look like doing too much against them. Della Doherty was very, very good. Anya O'Gorman the first half against Orla Conroy probably was the matchup that I would have been pushing the ball to, but they kept on going to Leo Leary up the right side. But look, overall, like, I think it was a fair result. Rovers would be Wexford, I guess I'd say, would be the happier with it given the way the game finished. But it was Yeah, fair enough result.
Eileen, the Selico Cajarinas didn't win again. So, I mean, is it a poor start to the season, or is that a bit harsh yet?
I think that's probably a bit harsh, but I would expect you to be harsh, and Shamrock Rovers always decky and never disappoint me by not being harsh. No, look, I think for Wexford it's probably a better point because I don't think Shamrock Rovers dropped too many points in Tala last year. And as John said, especially late on, the Wexford keeper, like she made a few incredible saves, really, really good. I know you could argue maybe the two keepers could do better for the 2 goals, but no, yeah, look, I think Shamrock Rovers themselves, of course, are going to be a little bit disappointed because it's 2 draws, and as you said, kind of teams round you can kick on fairly quickly, and in 2 rounds of fixtures you don't want to be dropping too many points at the same time. But I thought Leo O'Leary was excellent in the second half, and just to mention as well, John had just mentioned Orla Conlon there and just reminded me that it was her 200th appearance, Lolly Conlon, for Wexford at the weekend. She's only 26 years of age, like 200 appearances in for Wexford and National League level it's incredible for a 26-year-old. Unreal, yeah. I didn't realize she was so young, to be honest. I literally just saw it on Instagram how young she was. So fair play to her. But yeah, look, it's that thing, and we're going to say Wexford, like you just never know how Wexford are going to show up, and when they do, they'll be able to take points off every team, whether that's Shamrock Rovers, whether that's at Talca Park, at Green Oak. They are capable of it, but equally, like they're capable of coming to Turner's Cross and losing. So who knows?
I thought Scarlett Hearn was absolutely brilliant.
She's class.
Just like not so it doesn't seem like we're always down in Shamrock Rovers. She was sensational. I mean, I couldn't get over it. Like she was so good. Like she's got to be. She can't be too far off of having an international manager looking at her. Like
yeah, like since she signed for Athlone last summer, like I thought she was probably. I know, like she. As soon as she went in there in the summer, now she was excellent for Athlone as well, but I really thought she kicked it up a level when she went to Shamrock Rovers. She was outstanding the back half of last season. She's a really, really, really impressive player.
Okay, I'm gonna risk everything here now by picking Eileen up on something, right? But like Eileen, you're saying no for I don't know, 12 months, 18 months. If Wexford show up, they can beat anybody. But like that's grand in theory, but yes, but that's it. That's what I was going to say. The evidence is just not there to back that up. And I mean, is it time to say? And I know this on the back of an away point at Shamrock Rovers, so it's probably not the best time for me to be doing it. But I mean, like at some stage, are you just going to have to stop with the if Wexford show up and on paper and etc. 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 and maybe start to accept that this Wexford team is not maybe what you think it is?
Yeah, very much so, because as you said, like if I look at that team every time on paper, I think, Jesus, that's an incredible side. But like the results of the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, certainly haven't reflected that. And maybe that's a little bit of bias on my part as well, because obviously I have friends playing down there and I've seen this side come through and be very, very successful. And you have a lot of the remnants of that side there. So maybe you can be a little bit kind of, I suppose, coloured by that at times. But yeah, look, if they don't get if they kind of continue on the trajectory they're on at the moment from last year, obviously I will have to stop saying that, but I suppose early doors for them yet. But I suppose the next couple of weeks will tell an awful lot. Look, City go down there next week and that'll be an interesting one, because at times last season there wasn't very much between them.
Yeah, look, we'll give them another couple of weeks and come back to it. You just mentioned City there, Eileen, so it's probably the next place to go. I have to say, and people who listen to last week's podcast won't have seen it, but we record the podcast in video, but we only put out the audio. What struck me most about Phil Trill last week, guys, was he just exuded so much confidence. Like, and you talk about body language and things like that, and what we can see that people listening to the podcast can't see. I don't think I've ever spoken to somebody who looked as confident or looked like they had as much belief in what it was they were saying as well. I mean, it was just a man exuded confidence, and he really gave me the impression, and I regretted afterwards that I didn't ask him, but I do think Phil Trill fully expects Galway United women to win the league, maybe if not this year, then he fully expects Galway to win a league title in the next year or two. And they then back that up by beating Cork City 5-0 on Saturday. Obviously, there was the whole thing about where the game was going to be played and, whether it was going to be played. And eventually the game was played in Tuam. Galway won 5-0. It's a poor result again from a Cork City perspective. But, John, from a Galway perspective, it's just another result that kind of makes you sit up and take notice of what they may be capable of achieving on the West Coast this year.
Yeah. And I don't want to be delving into the Athlone Bohs game either, but I was watching, especially the first half. Athlone, I thought they were absolutely sensational on Saturday, and right the way through that, I was kind of there going, Jesus, how good are Galway? Because they made this Athlone team look ordinary last week. As bad as that result is for Cork City, I think I definitely picked the wrong dark horse for the season, because the evidence is starting to stack up that Galway are a very, very special side. Now, look, I think the fact that the game got switched to Astro hurt Cork City a little bit, and there was a little bit, but the goals that Galway scored, like they carved us open time and time again. But yeah, no, I think there's quite a very strong side in Galway this year. I think they're going to cause a lot of upsets, and a lot of bookies are going to have to start thinking about them as well.
Eileen, when we spoke to Phil last week, you only mentioned two players by name. One was Julianne Russell, the other was Jenna Slattery. One got a hat trick, the other got 2 goals against Cork City. I mean, it's like it's almost like you know what you're talking about.
I swear now, I was after picking out 2 names that no one had ever heard of before. Like Julianne Russell's one of the best footballers to ever come out of this country, and how did I ever come up with her name? No, look. Obviously, there was no stream of the game, thankfully, as a Cork City fan. So we've only seen the goals. Very easy, wasn't it? Was it very easy because we defended very poorly, or was it very easy because they're that good? I'm not sure. Maybe a little of both. But yeah, look, obviously there'll be tougher tests ahead for that Galway side, and it'll be interesting to see where they go, because they look really impressive. And I did say in the group G, once it goes on Astro, I was a little bit fearful because of how good they were against Athlone, and that game had been on Astro the week before, and just how slick they were, how quick they moved the ball, how comfortable they all are in possession of the ball. It probably would have suited City if we were on kind of a bit of a heavier pitch. It might have slowed them down a little bit. But look, it wasn't to be. I'm glad that they managed to get the game played, and fair play to everyone for getting that done, because I can't imagine that's an easy thing to get organised on short notice when seasons are going on everywhere. But like, it would have been it's an awful ask for someone to travel up and then suddenly the game's called off. So I know it's not ideal for City, but like, it's the same for both sides. They both were both in one venue and had to go to another. It is what it is at the moment with the way the weather is. It's disappointing and it's worrying, to be honest. As a Cork City fan, when you see results like that, it's concerning. And hopefully it's a blip, because I just think it was a bad day at the office, and hopefully, look, that they'll be able to bounce back next week.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing, when there was no stream, we can't really delve too far into the game or into it in any great depth. And okay, obviously the scoreline tells you a lot, and the goals and the manner in which they were scored, or maybe from our point of view, City fans, the manner in which they were conceded probably tells you a lot. But like, John, it's too soon to be panicking or too soon to be getting overly worried yet from a Cork City point of view. But I think just before you answer, what I will say is their next few league games are Bohs away, they play DLR, they play Sligo, they play Treat. There's a run of games there. I think that even though it's still very early in the season, the next 3 or 4 league games and the way the fixtures fall will almost define Cork City's season. Or is that me making too much out of a run of 3 or 4 league games, John?
I think it might be. There are a few players that came into the squad quite late that probably Danny would like to have further along in terms of match fitness, match sharpness. But I do think Danny and the players themselves will have ambitions to pick something up over the next few games. They won't want to start getting into that losing habit, for want of a better term. and I think they do have to try and pick up something like away to Bohs, DLR. Those two games, they're kind of every game you go along without picking up points, it's going to get tougher and tougher. And it is something we said at the start of the season. There's no doubt City have improved, but every other club has improved as well, and that's probably what the worry is. Possibly with the exception of DLR, but City need to, just for a confidence point of view, they need to get something from the next few games. Wouldn't say it's necessarily season defining, but the gap between bottom and top will open up very, very quickly, and even the gap between bottom and middle will open up as fast.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Eileen, finally, and John mentioned it already there, Athlone went and won 1-0 away at Bohs. Obviously, Ken Kiernan having left Athlone and gone to Bohs, I won't say there was an edge to the game, but there was just both sides would have known a lot about the other, just in terms of how they were going to set up, how they were going to play, because there was a lot of associations between the two sides. But John made the point that Athlone looked very, very good against Bohs on Saturday, and therefore that in a line of form, it boosts Galway's form. It's a good result and a good performance from Athlone, Eileen, and something they can look to build on in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and I suppose we had speculated while Galway were very good, was that just an off night from Athlone? And I think their performance at Dalymount would indicate it was maybe an off night. The game against Galway, because they were excellent. John said it. I know he watched all the first half as well. It was a really, really good game of football. Bohs defended excellently. They were so solid. Lisa Murphy was brilliant. Rachel Kelly made a few unbelievable saves in both halves. Just as an attacking threat, they had options from everywhere, like coming deep from midfield, both out wide on both wings. Like Athlone were just really, really good, but they did find it really hard to break down that Bohemian side. Tegan Ruddy and Ciara Marr, they were all excellent. Just in the back line, they were really good. And there was just a couple of, and you're there and you're like, oh, it's gone in. And Rachel Kelly just get a hand to it from nowhere. Like, she really was incredible. I actually think she's probably the best keeper in the league. She'd probably never get that credit because she's not at one of the top clubs, but she is week in, week out. She's a top performer for Bohs. And look, then going forward, they did have a couple of breakouts, but they didn't causing too much trouble. Fiona Donnelly nearly had a carbon copy of her goal, and again, only that was a great save by Katie Keane. It was been 2 weeks in a row that she'd been putting the ball in the top corner, so I'd say they'd be encouraging her to shoot every week. But look, Chloe Singleton is kind of a master at those runs from deep and those late runs into the box, and she gets a great header. And said, look, it probably was a difficult game, as you said, the fact that the two lads worked so closely together last year. They're going to know, Ken is going to have a very good knowledge of Athlone, and Kieran's going to have a very good knowledge about how Ken wants to play the game as well. So it was an interesting dynamic to it. But in terms of LOI TV and everything, it's really, really good product. I know John mentioned the commentary as well, and it was excellent. I was really impressed, and it was just one man on his own, and it was good, really knowledgeable, not kind of nonsense for the sake of nonsense, which sometimes it can be. So a really good game and a good result for Athlone, but Bohs will be grand. There'll be no fear of them because, as I said, I think defensively they're so solid and they have options up top that'll get them out of trouble, I think.
John, Eileen just mentioned something there, and it was something you brought up in the chat earlier on today, and I never came back to you, but I did find out that the chap who was on commentary on his own for that game, I believe his name is Tony Magner. And John, you were very, very impressed with the commentary that he offered up.
Yeah, no, I was, and it's a funny thing because the game, it was such a good advert for the only. Actually, I'll come back to that later on. But it was such a good advert for the league. Two teams going out of hammer and tongs. Absolutely brilliant quality of football. Like, I would have picked out the same, not just copying Eileen, I swear, but Rachel Kelly, Lisa Murphy were outstanding. But the saves, those saves came from outstanding play from Athlone. But Tony, was it? He just, it was a really fast paced game. He kept up with it. He was on his own, which is so hard to do. There was no co-commentator there, just really, really on point. And it does add to the overall experience to have good commentary and knowledgeable commentary talk about who these players are, where they've come from, what their strengths and weaknesses are. Look, just as a package, that game was sensational. Like, it's brilliant to have it for the league.
Okay, I mean, now that we're gone as far as not alone praising Dublin teams, praising the rest of the league, but now we're even praising Dublin-based commentators. I mean, it just feels like that if there was any doubt that Las Damas might be a Cork City podcast, it can no longer be said, because everything now was getting praised. Guys, one very quick thing before we move away from the games, and we're only 2 weeks in, and I know it's not a huge body of work yet, or a huge sample size, but 10 games played. In the 10 games so far, only one game has gone over the magical 2.5 goals mark for the game, and that was Galway's 5-0 win against Galway, or against Cork City on Saturday. And only 2 of the games have seen both teams score, which are both Shamrock Rovers games, which finished 1-1. So, as I said, it's a small body of work and a small sample size, Eileen, but it does look early on like defences are on top. Is that a fair statement so far?
Yeah, I think so. I think, and look, you're going to see there's still be mad scorelines. There's mad scorelines in every league in the world, and don't read too much into them. It's the fact that there's not mad scorelines every week. That's the main thing, because in this league for so long, every single week there was absolutely off the wall scorelines. And I think the less and less we see of them, the better. But as I said, like, you could watch Premier League and you have those scorelines some weekends. So no, yeah, I think that's fair. I think defensively teams have looked really, really solid. And look, if you look at, like, say, Sligo last week, even Bohs this week, I know they lost, but at the same time, DLR last week, teams are seeing that if you have that, if you could be organised and you could be solid at the back, and if you can keep a team out, then obviously half your battle's done. You only have to just go up and pop the ball in the other net, and that's handy enough to do, isn't it?
Well, as I said, there's only been 2 games of 10 where both teams have scored, so maybe it's not as easy as you think.
I don't know, Decky, to be honest. You're only looking at the betting markets, are you?
No, because you can't bet in those markets, but it is something I am tracking.
Unfortunately.
No, not in the women's league. But no, it was just something that jumped out at me because...
No, but it is something that if I look at it, like, apart from, do you know, like, you'd look at it start of the season, you're saying, like, who's going to score the goal, who's going to get the golden boot, like, and there's no one really jumping out at you. You think Anya O'Gorman will be there because she's always kind of there, but after that you're kind of like, do you know, like, is there somebody there in the league that's kind of going to bang in 20 goals? I don't know, is there? I think maybe Joy Ralph, I kind of was thinking at the start of the season, but maybe not looking like that now, do you know? But whereas before, like, we had Amber Barrett, looked like Kate Mooney was going to do it last year. We always had a standout striker, but when there's not those kind of out and out goal scorers in the league, yeah, you are relying on, I said, your midfielders to chip in a lot, which maybe that kind of explains either great defending or poor finishing. We're unsure what it is yet.
Oh, I think it's great. I think it's more defensive than it is poor finishing, to be honest with you. But look, time will tell. Something we might have a look at again in a few weeks' time. John, is there anything else you want to pick up from any of those games before we move on?
The only thing, actually, a lot of at loans forward players get a load of praise, but I thought Shauna Brennan was absolutely brilliant for them at right back. She was excellent. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So look, that wraps up the week, but there's just one more thing we gotta do before we can wrap it all up. Yeah, it's that time again for the good, the bad, and the ugly from the week that was. Eileen, I believe you want to kick us off.
With the good, this is going to absolutely, it's already catching in my throat. The 2 clubs I'm about to praise, Bohemians and Shamrock Rovers, great crowds. No, seriously though, brilliant crowds. There was, I think there was over 900 in Daly Mount Park, and you could audibly hear it on the stream. Shamrock Rovers had close to 900, and again you could hear it on the stream. That's brilliant pushes. And in fairness to Shamrock Rovers, we were talking last week about maybe clubs not doing enough. They're excellent on social media. Ooh, I feel terrible saying it. But they are, like, you talk about wanting to sell a club and sell your players. in terms of pushing them forward. And Shamrock Rovers are doing a brilliant job of it, because they're sending out these little clips with who's the messiest in the dressing room, who's the loudest, who's this, who's that. And they're little screen bites and they're little grabs that will grab people's attention because they're short videos. And that's what draws people into the league. And that's why they're getting crowds at their games. And again, there's great pictures, and they another very good video out this morning of all their players meeting the supporters after the game. And there's stuff you have to push out. You have to keep doing that week in, week out. So look, brilliant to see, and fair play to those two clubs for getting really big crowds. I know Treaty had, I think, over 300, which is probably quite a big crowd for them, and they'll be looking to grow that. So look, it's an area of the league that we need to see keep growing. And I think, as said, you have to give credit to any club that's going to do it and get those crowds. And hopefully, like, especially that Bohs Athlone game, like if you were at that game, you'd absolutely go back, because it was so back and forth. It was such a good game of football. And there seemed to be really good atmosphere and stuff in there as well. And so, yeah, that's the good. Two really big crowds. Great to see. Long may it continue, and long may it continue to grow as well.
As Eileen said, John, that's the good. Where are you going to take us?
I'm going to go now with the complete opposite, because I'm going to pick the same game and take the bad. My bad is actually Bohemians. And I'll tell you why, because everything about that game was a fantastic advert for the league. They had, how many people is in the stand today? 2,500. So like you'd one seat and three full, something like that. You'd fantastic commentary. But what my bad is that the camera for women's games is in the middle of the Jody in Bohs, and for men's games it's on the opposite side of the pitch facing into the Jody. So there's either two separate streaming services that they use differently, or they take down the men's fixtures on a Friday night, and it's all done out of the back of the Jody. That game would have looked a million times better had the camera been facing into the Jody. I mean, if it had been, you have an absolute big crowd, backdrop to a fantastic match, and it's a real missed opportunity to even push on what was a great occasion even more. So my bad is Bohemians' camera placement, and I hope they sort it out if they keep getting crowds like that, because there's no excuse, because we all know from the men's games that the cameras can be on that side of the pitch. There's no excuses about safety or shimmying up old stands or anything like that. They can do it, so just do it.
Okay, and that then, once again, maybe not coincidentally, leaves me with the ugly. But what I will say is that my self-esteem is at an all-time low. But my ugly is... my ugly is DLR socks.
Bad weekend for socks in the women's game.
Am I missing something?
That's gone over your head. Arsenal and Chelsea had to be delayed by half an hour because Arsenal didn't bring the right socks. Yeah.
Yes. I know that you say it. I did see it, but yeah, completely over my head at the time. But anyway, DLR's luminous yellow socks in the Markets field. There's not a whole lot I can say other than they wore luminous yellow socks.
That seemed to get brighter as the pitch got darker.
Yeah, it was like 22 highlighter pens just running around the pitch, the Markets field. So, not for me. So that's my ugly for the week anyway. So that's where we are. Very quickly, before we wrap the pod up, we just need to have a look at the fixtures for next week. And of course, it's not the standard league fixtures. It's the first round of the All-Ireland Cup. There isn't a whole lot to speak about. I guess the only thing we need to look at, and again, of course, it is Cork City related, but that is purely coincidental. We have this very weird situation, Eileen, where Cork City's home game against Wexford is to be played in Ferry Carrick Park. And it just doesn't sit very well.
No, and it doesn't sit well because of, I suppose, how last season went and how often we were just pulled out of Turner's Cross at kind of the drop of a hat. And it seems to be the situation again. I understand there's issues with pitches. I get it. But at what point is this football club going to fight for the women's team? Are they going to do anything for the women's team, in fact? Because they're just content as usual. And look, in fairness, like they could say Turner's Cross is this and Turner's Cross that, but Ferry Carrick Park is worse. They have a pitch inspection every week down there, it seems, for their men's team as well. But like they're obviously willing to take the hit and say, no, but we'll get the pitch right for the women's game, because the women's game are as integral a part of this club as the men's team. And it's a pity my club couldn't view things the same. Fight for the women's team. You give them nothing. Just fight for them, that they could stay in their home pitch, please. Thank you.
But I think, to be fair, to play devil's advocate, I don't think it's that straightforward, in so much that obviously Cove Ramblers are playing in Turner's Cross on Friday night. I believe there's a Junior Cup final also taking place there on Sunday. And I think, John, the issue was, obviously you have those 2 games, but there's just no way you can play 3 games there on any given weekend. And the MFA will say, well, look, we were given dates and we were given fixtures, and this date was free. That Saturday, there was no game scheduled. It's not our fault that it worked out that there would be a game, because the All-Ireland Cup came along, and it just so happens Cork City were at home on that first weekend. So, not our fault, nothing we can do. Is that something you'd be willing to give some credence to, John?
The notice about the fixture, fair enough, because we discussed it on the pod last week that no one knew when these games were going on. But there has never been a point in history where Turner's Cross hasn't been able to take a game a day, going back a long, long time. This all kicked off last year, and it kicked off around the time that Turner's Cross started getting Irish underage internationals. And that's what the pitch seems to be being protected for, in my opinion. I know the club, Danny was asked to switch to Bishopstown and switch to Fermoy, and host the game somewhere else. And he refused, and I think he's absolutely dead right, because to Eileen's point earlier, it'll become the default position then anytime there's a drop of rain. We need the MFA are getting paid by Cove Ramblers and Cork City to keep the pitch right. And maybe they need to work a little bit harder.
It just means that, for whatever reason, Cork City's home game against Wexford will be played in Ferry Carrick Park. The other game in that group sees Shelburne going to Cliftonville. Group A, Peamount play Linfield in Peamount Park. Bohs will take on Lisburn on Sunday in Dalymount Park. In Group C, DLR will play Crusaders, and Treaty United will be at home to Shamrock Rovers. And finally, Group D will see Sligo face off against Galway in a derby game, while Glentoran will play Athlone in the final game, which will take place on Sunday. Very quickly, and we are going to say very quickly, Eileen, is this going to be a very different competition to the one we saw last year?
I think so. The fact that the fixtures are spread out a bit, I think you'll see a very different, because last year maybe some squads mightn't have had their full squads in, because the girls might have had holidays and stuff booked. It was kind of thrown in a bit later. I also think the Northern Irish teams, does their season not kick off fully for another couple of weeks? So I suppose it's almost pre-season, the group stage for them. So I'm not sure how good they will look at the start of it. But yeah, I would think, especially now, like the first, realistically, all of the group fixtures now, I think last year you might have seen, I think it said teams a bit lighter. That's not going to happen this year, because teams are building momentum and they want to kind of roll into it, and you're still going to have your international breaks and stuff like that. So I think you'll see a very different, and I think you'll see a more competitive tournament this year as well, I think.
Yeah, John, we're not going to see the situation we saw last year, where a number of teams fielded weakened teams, etc., etc. And I think this year it would probably be a competition that everybody is going to give their full resources to, John.
Yeah, I think so. I'd expect it to be more competitive too. I think last year it was kind of occurring almost in a pre-planned break. where everyone thought we're going to have time off. But like to Eileen's point, there's teams now that want to build momentum into the league campaign. I think it's probably slightly unfair on the northern teams, the starting point, but I don't really care. It is what it is. No, I'm still bitter about them not travelling outside the north last year. I just think it's hilarious that a certain team has to travel to Turner's Cross and Ferry Carrick this year. But anyway, yeah, no, it should be a good competition.
Right. Well, on that note, so we will call it a day, guys. Very quickly, is there any last words, anything else you need to get off your chest before we say adios?
All good from me. I just want to go to bed.
Adios.